It's been a wonderful ride, and it's been very rewarding because I have people recognizing me that I think, well, how did this young person know who I am?
Yes, I am the bearer of the torch, and now I'm passing it forward.
I just love her very much so, and I think that she's such a special woman.
Before Gal Gadot ever picked up the lasso of truth, there was one woman who defined power, beauty, and grace like no one else. Lynda Carter. She wasn't just playing Wonder Woman. For millions around the world, she was Wonder Woman. But while her smile lit up television screens and her presence inspired an entire generation, behind the golden cuffs and perfect curls, her reality was far from heroic. Fame gave her everything she dreamed of and then quietly began to take it all away. The world saw her as untouchable, but when the cameras stopped rolling, Lynda faced battles that no costume or superpower could fix. Addiction, heartbreak, betrayal, and loss, all hidden behind the image of America's beloved superhero. Decades later, the truth about what really happened after Wonder Woman ended is finally coming out. At 73, Lynda Carter has opened up about the pain she endured, the mistakes she made, and the strength it took to rebuild her life from the ground up. This isn't the story of a comic book hero. It's the story of a woman who fell, rose again, and proved that real strength doesn't come from a cape. It comes from surviving the storm. To an entire generation, she wasn't just playing Wonder Woman, she was Wonder Woman. Her face was everywhere. Magazine covers, talk shows, posters on bedroom walls. Audiences couldn't get enough of her charm, her confidence, and the effortless way she balanced strength with elegance. But behind that flawless image was someone who, even at the height of fame, felt like her life was spinning faster than she could control. Lynda Jean Carter was born on July 24, 1951 in Phoenix, Arizona. She wasn't born into Hollywood privilege or a musical dynasty. Her father, Colby Carter, worked as a small businessman, and her mother, Juanita, was a homemaker. They were a modest family, but they gave her something that would carry her through every chapter of her life: confidence. Even as a child, Lynda had a spark that stood out. At just 5 years old, she made her first public appearance on Lou King's talent show, where she sang for a live audience. That moment changed her. The applause, the attention, and the thrill of being on stage became a feeling she would chase for the rest of her life. By the time she reached high school, Lynda wasn't just the pretty girl in class. She was the one who could sing, act, and light up a room. She joined a band called Just Us, performing at school events and small venues around town. She didn't need fame back then. The simple joy of connecting with people through music was enough. But her ambitions were already growing faster than her surroundings could handle. After high school, she enrolled at Arizona State University and was soon voted Most Talented Student, a title that boosted her confidence and hinted at a much larger destiny. Still, deep down, she knew that college wasn't where her story was meant to unfold. So, she made a decision that would change everything. She dropped out of college to chase her dreams full-time. With that leap of faith, she joined another band, The Relatives, and began touring across America. The group wasn't famous, and the paychecks barely covered the gas money. But the experience toughened her up. Night after night, Lynda sang in smoky bars and roadside lounges, earning her stripes as a performer. Her passion and persistence caught the attention of bandleader Howard Garfin, who invited her to join the Garfin Gathering, a popular lounge band that toured the country in the early 1970s. Life on the road wasn't glamorous. Long nights, cheap motels, and endless travel. But it gave Lynda something no beauty pageant could teach: grit. She learned how to command a stage, connect with an audience, and survive in a world that didn't hand anything easily. Yet, somewhere between hotel rooms and late-night shows, she began to feel a different pull. Music had been her first love, but it wasn't the only way she wanted to shine. She wanted to be seen, remembered, and recognized, not just for her voice, but for her presence. By 1972, Lynda realized it was time to pivot. She decided to take a chance on something completely new: modeling. She entered the Miss World USA pageant, never expecting what would follow. She didn't just win. She captured the imagination of a nation. Overnight, Lynda Carter went from a lounge singer to America's newest beauty queen. But as fame knocked on her door, she had no idea that it was bringing both opportunity and heartbreak with it. Winning the Miss World USA title in 1972 changed everything for Lynda Carter. Overnight, she became a national sensation. Her photo splashed across newspapers, her smile recognized in every state. But while many saw her as the picture-perfect beauty queen, Lynda saw it differently. The crown wasn't the destination. It was just a ticket to something bigger. Modeling opened doors, but she quickly realized she didn't want to spend her life posing in front of cameras. She wanted to be the story, not just decorate it. With that determination, she packed her bags and moved to Los Angeles, the city where dreams were made and broken every single day. Hollywood wasn't welcoming to outsiders. The early 1970s were a tough time for women trying to break into acting. Casting directors cared more about looks than talent, and Lynda's pageant background made her an easy target for stereotypes. She heard the same lines over and over, "You're beautiful, but can you act?" It would have been easy to give up, but she didn't. She began taking acting classes, studying everything she could about performance, body language, and camera presence. She wasn't just chasing fame, she was building a foundation, one rejection at a time. Soon, the persistence began to pay off. Small TV roles started trickling in. She appeared in episodes of Starsky and Hutch, Nokia, and Cause, slowly proving that she was more than a pretty face. These weren't glamorous roles. She played waitresses, side characters, sometimes just a few lines per episode. But each one taught her something. Her first major opportunity came in 1974 with the film Bobby Joe and the Outlaw, a gritty road movie where she played a rebellious young woman opposite Marjoe Gortner. It wasn't a blockbuster, but it was raw, edgy, and gave Lynda a chance to show her intensity on screen. Critics didn't exactly shower the movie with praise, but audiences noticed her. Suddenly, producers began calling, not because she was a pageant winner, but because she could hold her own as an actress. But fate had other plans. In 1975, Lynda heard about a new television pilot being developed, a live-action series based on DC Comics' Wonder Woman. The studio had already tested other actresses, but no one quite fit the image. Lynda almost didn't audition, thinking she wasn't the comic book type. Yet something told her to give it a try. When she walked into the audition room, everything changed. Her height, grace, and poise made her look like she had stepped straight out of the comic panels. More importantly, she understood the character. She saw Diana Prince not just as a superhero, but as a symbol of compassion, strength, and humanity. When the call finally came that she had landed the role, Lynda's life turned upside down overnight. The show was set to premiere in 1976, and with it she would become the face of one of the most iconic characters in television history. But what she didn't realize then was that Wonder Woman wouldn't just make her famous, it would define her life forever. Behind the smiles and glittering success, the pressure began to build. Lynda knew that one wrong move could send her back to obscurity. Hollywood adored its stars, but it also had a short memory. So she threw herself completely into the role, determined to make Wonder Woman unforgettable. She trained tirelessly, performed many of her own stunts, and even came up with the idea for the iconic spin transformation that would later become a trademark of the character. She wanted to give audiences more than a superhero. She wanted to give them hope. As the cameras rolled and ratings climbed, Lynda Carter became a household name. Little girls wanted to be her. Young women admired her confidence. Men were mesmerized by her beauty. She was living the dream. But as the spotlight grew brighter, so did the shadows behind it. Fame was thrilling, but it came with a price she hadn't expected. When Wonder Woman premiered in 1976, no one, not even Lynda Carter herself, expected it to become the cultural phenomenon it did. Within weeks, she went from a working actress barely making rent to a global icon. The character of Diana Prince was everything audiences needed at the time: bold, fearless, kind, and unapologetically strong. For women in particular, it was revolutionary. Television had rarely shown a female hero who didn't need saving, who could command a scene with both power and empathy. And the person who brought that to life wasn't a Hollywood insider. It was Lynda Carter, a small-town girl from Arizona, who had somehow become the face of empowerment. What made Lynda's version of Wonder Woman special wasn't just the costume or the fight scenes. It was the heart she brought to the role. She played Diana Prince not as an untouchable goddess, but as a woman trying to balance duty and compassion. She wanted viewers to see a real person beneath the tiara. Her dedication showed in every scene. She performed many of her own stunts, often insisting on redoing takes until they felt authentic. The famous spin transformation that turned Diana Prince into Wonder Woman, that was her idea. It became so iconic that DC Comics later made it part of the official character lore. But success came with a cost. The schedule was grueling, and the expectations were relentless. Lynda found herself working long hours, constantly traveling for press appearances, and dealing with intense public scrutiny. She was suddenly the most recognizable woman on television, and that kind of fame can be isolating. Everyone wanted something from her. Autographs, interviews, endorsements, but few people cared about the person behind the persona. She often said later that the fame felt like wearing armor. It looked shiny and perfect from the outside, but inside it was suffocating. The show itself faced challenges. The first season, set during World War II, aired on ABC and became an instant hit, but budget issues and network disagreements threatened its future. When CBS picked up Wonder Woman for the second season, the setting shifted to the 1970s, giving it a more modern tone. The transition worked and ratings soared again, cementing Lynda's place in pop culture history. Children dressed as Wonder Woman for Halloween, and toy stores couldn't keep the merchandise on shelves. Every week, millions of viewers tuned in not just for the action, but to see Lynda's warmth and charisma light up the screen. Still, even as the world celebrated her, Lynda struggled with the pressure of being perfect. She was young, in her 20s, and suddenly carrying the weight of a cultural icon. Behind the scenes, the studio often tried to control her image, dictating how she dressed, spoke, and even how she should behave in public. Every move she made was scrutinized, and every headline reminded her that her career could vanish as quickly as it had begun. Lynda later admitted that during this period she felt like she was living two lives: the adored superhero that everyone wanted her to be, and the lonely, overworked woman who just wanted to breathe. Despite the exhaustion, she kept going. She felt a responsibility to her fans, especially young girls who saw her as a role model. She believed that if she gave up, she'd be letting them down. So she pushed herself harder, smiling for the cameras even when she felt like crying. What viewers didn't know was that her personal life was quietly unraveling. Her marriage to her manager, Ron Samuels, had begun to crumble under the weight of her fame and his controlling nature. She was becoming a symbol of female strength on screen while feeling powerless off-screen. By 1979, after 3 successful seasons, Wonder Woman came to an end. The show had made Lynda Carter a legend, but it had also taken a toll on her spirit. She had achieved everything she thought she wanted: fame, recognition, admiration. But deep down, she felt something was missing. When the cameras stopped rolling, she wasn't sure who she was without the costume. For years, the world would continue to see her as Wonder Woman. But Lynda Carter was about to begin a far more difficult journey, one that would force her to confront her own vulnerabilities and discover what real strength truly meant. When Wonder Woman ended in 1979, the world expected Lynda Carter to keep shining effortlessly. To the public, she was untouchable, a symbol of confidence and strength who could conquer anything. But behind that radiant smile, Lynda was suddenly facing one of the hardest transitions in Hollywood, stepping out of the shadow of an iconic role. Millions of fans still adored her, but producers had already begun to label her as the superhero girl. Offers for serious parts became scarce. It's a strange cruelty in show business. The same role that makes you famous can also trap you forever. Lynda was grateful for what Wonder Woman had given her, but she couldn't ignore the whisper in her mind, "Who am I without her?" Determined to prove she was more than a costume and a tiara, Lynda began taking bold steps in her career. She explored new genres, eager to show her range as an actress. One of her earliest post-Wonder Woman projects was the 1980 television film The Last Song, where she played a woman caught in a dangerous web of mystery. The performance was subtle, emotional, and far removed from the world of superheroes. The following years brought more roles, from the biographical film Rita Hayworth, The Love Goddess, where she portrayed the troubled screen legend, to suspense thrillers like Hotline and Lightning in a Bottle. Lynda was reinventing herself quietly, one role at a time, refusing to let Hollywood box her in. But as her professional life evolved, her personal life was falling apart. While filming Wonder Woman, she had married her manager and talent agent, Ron Samuels. On the outside, they looked like the perfect Hollywood couple, glamorous, successful, and constantly in the public eye. Yet behind closed doors, things were far from perfect. Samuels was controlling, and Lynda later admitted that she often felt trapped in the relationship. The pressure of maintaining her career while managing a difficult marriage pushed her toward drinking, something that began as a way to unwind and slowly turned into a dangerous escape. The constant spotlight only made things worse. Lynda was expected to appear flawless in every interview, to smile through every magazine photo shoot, and to always seem like the strong, happy woman the world adored. But late at night, when the cameras were gone, she was battling loneliness and anxiety that fame couldn't fix. When her marriage finally ended in 1982, it wasn't just a divorce. It was a breaking point. Lynda had spent so many years trying to be perfect that she'd lost sight of herself. The woman who once embodied courage on screen now felt powerless in her own life. She knew something had to change. For the first time, Lynda stepped away from Hollywood's chaos. She focused on healing, rediscovering the parts of herself that fame had buried. Then, in 1984, love found her again, this time with Robert Altman, a Washington, D.C. lawyer with no ties to show business. He was steady, kind, and everything her previous marriage wasn't. They married that same year, and Lynda believed she had finally found peace. But Hollywood rarely leaves its stars alone. Not long after their wedding, Robert became entangled in a major legal scandal involving the Bank of Credit and Commerce International. The media frenzy was brutal, and even though he was eventually cleared of all charges, the stress left deep scars on both of them. Lynda tried to stay strong, balancing her loyalty to her husband with her struggle to maintain her career. But the emotional weight was crushing. Her drinking worsened, and by the late 1980s, she realized she was spiraling. For someone who had played a superhero, admitting weakness was terrifying. But in 1992, she did something truly courageous. She checked herself into rehab. It was a turning point that changed everything. When she emerged, she wasn't Wonder Woman anymore. She was simply Lynda, a woman learning how to live honestly for the first time in years. She began speaking openly about her addiction, not to seek sympathy, but to help others understand that strength doesn't mean perfection. Rehab was the hardest decision Lynda Carter ever made, but it was also the most important. When she checked herself in, she wasn't the glamorous actress the world remembered. She was exhausted, heartbroken, and determined to find herself again. Years of trying to live up to an image had taken their toll, and fame had slowly eroded her sense of identity. But within those quiet, sober days of recovery, something inside her shifted. For the first time in decades, Lynda wasn't acting or performing. She was just being honest. She confronted her fears, her mistakes, and the pain she'd been hiding behind that famous smile. And when she walked out of rehab, she didn't just leave her addiction behind. She left behind the version of herself that needed to please everyone else. Recovery didn't happen overnight. Lynda had to rebuild her confidence step by step, learning how to live in the present instead of chasing approval. But she was determined. Her husband, Robert Altman, stood by her through it all, offering quiet strength when she needed it most. Together, they created a peaceful home away from Hollywood, raising their 2 children, James and Jessica, in Washington, D.C. For Lynda, motherhood brought a new kind of fulfillment. She finally felt grounded. Instead of red carpets and studio lights, her mornings were filled with family breakfasts and school drop-offs. After years of chaos, she'd found balance. Yet, even in this calmer chapter of her life, the world wasn't ready to let go of Wonder Woman. Everywhere she went, people still recognized her. Fans stopped her on the street to tell her what her role had meant to them. Women shared stories about how seeing her on TV gave them courage as little girls. It was humbling and sometimes overwhelming, but Lynda began to realize something important. Her role as Wonder Woman wasn't a burden, it was a gift. Instead of trying to escape it, she embraced it. She began speaking publicly about her struggles, blending honesty with the same strength that had once made her a hero on screen. She wanted her fans to know that even superheroes have bad days, and that true courage comes from getting back up again. As the 1990s unfolded, Lynda slowly returned to the entertainment world, but this time on her own terms. She began acting again, appearing in television movies and guest starring in popular shows. She no longer felt the pressure to be perfect. Instead, she chose roles that reflected maturity and depth. Hollywood was different now, and so was she. Her natural charisma, combined with her honesty about her past, made her more relatable than ever. In a culture obsessed with youth and perfection, Lynda Carter stood as proof that resilience was far more beautiful than flawlessness. But her creative energy wasn't limited to acting. Music, her first love, began calling to her again. She returned to the stage, performing in intimate venues across the country, her soulful voice connecting with audiences in a new way. Her shows weren't about nostalgia or fame, they were about expression. Each song she performed carried the weight of experience, of pain and triumph. For the first time since her teenage years, Lynda was singing not to be heard, but to be understood. Despite her renewed sense of purpose, life continued to test her. In 2001, the tragic events of 9/11 deeply affected her family and her husband's business in Washington. Lynda once again leaned on her strength, balancing public compassion with private grief. Through every challenge, she maintained a quiet dignity that impressed even her harshest critics. In interviews, she spoke candidly about her journey, often reminding people that healing is not a straight line, it's a daily choice. By the early 2000s, Lynda Carter had done something that few stars ever manage. She had reinvented herself, not as a Hollywood figure, but as a human being. She was no longer trying to live up to Wonder Woman's perfection. She was living as a woman who had made peace with her imperfections. And just when it seemed she had found lasting happiness, life would once again remind her that even the strongest hearts can break. For decades, Lynda Carter had been admired for her strength. But in 2021, that strength would be tested like never before. Her husband of nearly 37 years, Robert Altman, the man who had helped her rebuild her life, passed away unexpectedly. It was a loss that shattered her world. For so long, Robert had been her anchor, the calm voice who steadied her when the chaos of fame returned. The person who reminded her that she was more than the character the world adored. When he was gone, Lynda found herself facing a silence that felt unbearable. The woman who had inspired millions suddenly felt small and alone. "He was the love of my life," she later admitted, her voice trembling, "and losing him felt like losing half of myself." But even in her grief, there was a flicker of the same resilience that had carried her through every trial for her. She knew she couldn't let the pain consume her. In the months following Robert's passing, Lynda turned inward. She began to write, to sing, and to pour her emotions into music. It was something she hadn't done in years. Her songs became letters to her late husband, each lyric a reflection of love, loss, and gratitude. One of her performances, Human and Divine, was dedicated to him, a hauntingly beautiful reminder that their bond would never fade. On stage, her voice carried the ache of someone who had lived, loved, and survived. Fans who watched her perform could feel the vulnerability. It wasn't the confident Wonder Woman from the 1970s, it was a woman bearing her soul. But grief didn't stop her from moving forward. In interviews, she spoke openly about the process of healing, urging others who had lost loved ones to let themselves feel everything. "You can't go around the pain," she said softly. "You have to walk through it." Her honesty resonated deeply. It reminded people that behind the fame and glamour, Lynda Carter was human, someone who had faced heartbreak and still managed to find light again. As she began appearing in public more frequently, fans noticed that the sparkle in her eyes had changed. It was softer now, tempered by experience, but still full of life. Lynda also found comfort in her advocacy work. She became more vocal about causes close to her heart, especially those supporting women's rights, breast cancer awareness, and addiction recovery. These weren't just celebrity endorsements, they were missions born from lived experience. She knew what it felt like to lose control, to fight through self-doubt, and to start over. Her authenticity made her message powerful. To a new generation, she wasn't just a nostalgic icon. She was proof that real heroes don't wear capes. They heal, they fall, and they rise again. Hollywood soon came calling once more. In 2020, she appeared in Wonder Woman 1984 playing Asteria, an ancient Amazon warrior. It was a brief cameo, but it carried enormous emotional weight. When Lynda appeared on screen, fans erupted with joy. It felt like a reunion with an old friend. The moment symbolized something larger than a role. It was a passing of the torch. Gal Gadot, who now plays Wonder Woman, publicly praised Lynda for paving the way for women in Hollywood. The two shared mutual respect, and Lynda embraced her successor warmly. She didn't see Gal as competition. She saw her as continuation. "She carries the spirit beautifully," Lynda said, "and I'll always be her biggest fan." This resurgence reminded everyone that Lynda Carter was far from done. She began performing again, releasing music, and reconnecting with audiences who had grown up idolizing her. Social media introduced her to a new generation that admired her not just for her beauty, but for her authenticity. Young fans flooded her pages with messages of gratitude, saying how her portrayal of Wonder Woman had helped them believe in themselves. Lynda often responded personally, her warmth as genuine as ever. Through tragedy and triumph, she had come full circle. The woman who once hid behind a mask of perfection now stood tall in her truth. Older, wiser, and stronger than ever, she had faced addiction, heartbreak, and grief, but she had never surrendered. And though she no longer wore the iconic costume, she embodied Wonder Woman in every way that mattered. Because for Lynda Carter, the real superpower wasn't flight or strength, it was survival. By the time Lynda Carter reached her 70s, she had lived several lifetimes in one. She had been a beauty queen, a TV legend, a wife, a mother, a singer, and a survivor. Yet somehow, she still carried herself with the same poise and warmth that first won audiences over in the 1970s. Losing her husband could have broken her, but instead, it transformed her. Lynda began speaking more openly about grief, womanhood, and the challenges of aging in an industry that worships youth. Her words carried weight, not because of fame, but because they came from experience. "You don't stop being who you are because you get older," she told one interviewer. "You just become more yourself." It was a message that resonated with fans of all ages, especially women who had grown up watching her defy expectations on screen. In the years following Robert Altman's death, Lynda refused to retreat into isolation. She returned to the stage, this time not to play a character, but to perform as herself. Music became her lifeline once again, a bridge between past and present. Her concerts weren't just shows. They were intimate conversations set to melody. She shared stories of her career, her struggles with addiction, and her enduring love for her husband. Audiences who came expecting nostalgia left inspired by her vulnerability. Her voice, matured and rich with emotion, carried the kind of depth that only comes from a life fully lived. Hollywood, too, continued to embrace her. She made guest appearances in hit shows like Supergirl and Smallville, playing strong, complex women who reflected her own evolution. In Supergirl, she portrayed President Olivia Marsden, a symbolic passing of the torch from one female hero to another. The role was small but powerful, and it reminded audiences that Lynda still had the same screen presence that once made her a household name. Younger viewers who had never seen her in the original Wonder Woman series suddenly wanted to learn more about the woman who had paved the way. At conventions and interviews, Lynda became an ambassador not just for Wonder Woman but for empowerment itself. Fans, young and old, men and women alike, lined up for hours just to tell her how much she had meant to them. Some spoke about finding courage during difficult times, others about how she inspired them to follow their dreams. Lynda listened to each one with patience and kindness, fully aware that her character had become bigger than her career. "It's not about me anymore," she once said. "It's about what Wonder Woman represents. I just had the honor of being her for a little while." Her humility, combined with her resilience, made her a rare kind of Hollywood figure, someone whose fame had endured not through scandal or reinvention, but through authenticity. She had every reason to be bitter about the challenges she faced in her early years, yet she chose gratitude instead. In public speeches, she often spoke about second chances and forgiveness, reminding audiences that failure isn't the end of a story, it's just the turning point. Her story had plenty of both, and that's what made it real. Even as the decades passed, Lynda's influence only grew stronger. In 2018, she received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, a long overdue recognition of her impact on television and popular culture. During her speech, she grew emotional as she thanked her fans for standing by her all those years. "You made me feel like I mattered," she said, fighting back tears. You believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself." The crowd erupted in applause, not just for the actress, but for the woman behind her. The one who had fought through pain, self-doubt, and tragedy, and still stood tall. In her 70s, Lynda Carter became something she never set out to be, a symbol of endurance. She wasn't chasing fame anymore. She was living a life of purpose. She continued to support women's charities, advocate for addiction recovery, and mentor young artists trying to navigate the same pressures she once faced. She often reminded them that fame is fleeting, but integrity lasts forever. The world had known her as Wonder Woman, but those who listened to her now saw something deeper. A woman who had transformed pain into strength and strength into wisdom. And even without the costume, she still embodied the same message she carried decades ago, that compassion, resilience, and courage will always be the truest superpowers of all. Even after decades in the spotlight, Lynda Carter has never let fame define her. To this day, she carries herself with the same grace that once made her the face of an era. But now there's something more, a quiet wisdom, a sense of peace that only comes from having survived every kind of storm. At 73, she remains as magnetic as ever, not because of nostalgia or beauty, but because of authenticity. She no longer needs to prove herself to anyone. The girl from Arizona who dreamed of the stage became a legend, stumbled, broke, healed, and came back stronger each time. Now she stands not just as a memory of the past, but as a living reminder of resilience. Hollywood has a way of moving on, of replacing one icon with the next, but Lynda Carter is one of the few who has remained timeless. In interviews, she often laughs when people call her a legend. "I'm just a working woman," she says, downplaying a career that changed television forever. But her influence is impossible to ignore. Without her, there might not have been the kind of fearless, independent heroines we see on screen today. Before superhero movies dominated the box office, Lynda Carter showed that a woman could carry a franchise, inspire millions, and do it with integrity. Her version of Wonder Woman was more than entertainment. It was empowerment. That legacy continues to evolve. When she made her cameo as Asteria in Wonder Woman 1984, it wasn't just fan service. It was a full-circle moment. Standing beside Gal Gadot, Lynda symbolized the bridge between generations, the passing of a torch she had carried for nearly half a century. After the film's release, fans flooded social media with messages of gratitude and admiration, many calling her appearance the heart of the movie. For Lynda, it was more than just a return to the screen. It was an acknowledgement that her work still mattered, that she was still part of the story. "It's beautiful," she said, "to see Wonder Woman inspire young girls today the same way she inspired me all those years ago." Outside of acting, Lynda has continued to shine as a singer and performer. Her concerts blend humor, storytelling, and rich vocals that show she never lost her love for the stage. Over the years, she's released several albums, including At Last in 2009 and Red, Rockin' Blues in 2018, both of which highlight her soulful sound and emotional depth. On stage, she doesn't rely on spectacle or nostalgia. She connects through sincerity. Whether performing jazz standards or her own compositions, she sings with the conviction of someone who's lived every lyric. Music has always been her safe place, a space where she can share her truth without needing to play a character. But Lynda's life isn't defined solely by performance. She's used her platform to advocate for causes she deeply believes in, from women's rights and addiction recovery to breast cancer awareness and the importance of mental health. She speaks openly about her past struggles, not as a confession, but as a way to let others know they're not alone. "We all have our battles," she once said, "but it's how we face them that defines who we are." That humility and honesty have made her more relevant than ever, especially in a time when authenticity feels rare. Even now, she continues to appear at conventions, smiling warmly as fans, many of them now parents or grandparents, thank her for shaping their childhoods. Younger fans, introduced to her through streaming platforms or the newer Wonder Woman films, are often surprised by how approachable she is. She doesn't act like a superstar because she never saw herself as one. To her, she's still that small-town girl who loved to perform, who chased a dream, and who never stopped believing in second chances. Looking back, it's hard not to see Lynda Carter's life as poetic in its symmetry. The woman who once played a superhero spent her real life becoming one. Quietly, humbly, and without special effects. She stood tall through heartbreak, addiction, and loss, and turned every setback into strength. She's more than a pop culture icon. She's a symbol of endurance, of grace under pressure, and of what it means to truly rise after falling. And maybe that's the greatest legacy of all. Because long after the lights fade and the screens go dark, people will remember the way Lynda Carter made them feel. Powerful, hopeful, and seen. She may have worn the armor of Wonder Woman, but it's her humanity that has kept her legendary. And if her story teaches us anything, it's that real heroes aren't defined by their powers. They're defined by their heart.